This is the real story of a German Shepherd who suffered terrible abuse at the hands of those meant to protect him. After months of systematic mistreatment, nobody believed he could recover, deemed too dangerous and beyond rehabilitation. He was scheduled for euthanasia within 48 hours. But when one brave veterinarian decided to intervene, what happened next surprised everyone at the shelter. This documented story shows how an animal's resilience can overcome the worst circumstances. You won't believe the transformation you're about to witness. The Riverside Animal Protection Center wasn't known for its ideal conditions, operating with minimal funding and insufficient staff. The municipal shelter often functioned at capacity in January 2022, following a police operation against an underground dog fighting ring. The shelter received several confiscated animals, including a German Shepherd, estimated to be around 3 years old. The dog, later named Titan by the staff, arrived in deplorable condition. His emaciated body revealed prominent ribs, old scars marked his muzzle and ears, and his vacant stare revealed months, perhaps years, of mistreatment. Unlike the other fighting dogs who displayed aggression, Titan exhibited extreme fear, cowering at the back of his kennel, trembling at any human approach mark. Dawson, a night shift worker with a notorious temper, made no secret of his disdain for problem animals. On his third night caring for the new arrivals, security cameras captured what would later become crucial evidence. Believing himself alone in the back section of the shelter, Dawson approached Titan's kennel with a bowl of food. "Still not eating, you worthless mutt," he muttered, sliding the bowl across the concrete floor. When Titan retreated further into the corner, Dawson unlocked the kennel door. What followed were 3 vicious kicks that sent the German Shepherd yelping in pain, desperately trying to make himself smaller. Against the wall, what Dawson failed to notice was Dr. Emily Carson, the shelter's newly hired veterinarian, working late to process medical records for the confiscated animals. Standing frozen in the doorway, she witnessed the entire incident, her medical bag dropping from her hand with a thud that finally alerted Dawson to her presence. "Doctor, I was just checking on the aggressive ones," he stammered, quickly stepping away from Titan's cage. "This one lunged at me when I brought the food." Emily's gaze moved from Dawson to the cowering German Shepherd, noting how the dog pressed himself against the wall, his body language showing nothing but fear. "No aggression, just terror." "That's not what I saw," she stated firmly, her voice shaking slightly with controlled anger. "And I believe the security camera saw the same thing I did." Dawson's expression darkened. "Cameras in this section have been down for maintenance all week. Technical issues." Asked Canyon. The implicit threat in his voice was clear. It would be his word against hers, and he'd been at the shelter for 5 years. Emily maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. "I'll be filing a report first thing tomorrow morning in theme and time. I'll take over care for this section tonight." Dawson reluctantly left. Emily approached Titan's kennel slowly, kneeling several feet away. The German Shepherd watched her with wary eyes, his buddy still trembling. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "That shouldn't have happened." The following morning, Emily arrived at Director Wilson's office with determination stealing her resolve. Robert Wilson, the shelter's director for the past decade, listened to her account with a practiced, neutral expression, occasionally making notes on his legal pad. "These are serious allegations, Dr. Carson," he said, finally leaning back in his chair. "But you understand that, without corroborating evidence, it's problematic. The security system in that wing has been malfunctioning since the storm last week." Emily had anticipated this response. "I've requested the IT logs for the camera system," she replied. "If the cameras were officially reported as malfunctioning, there should be documentation." Wilson's slight frown told her everything she needed to know. No such report existed because the cameras weren't actually broken. They were deliberately ignored when convenient. "I want to foster Titan," Emily stated, changing tactics. "The German Shepherd that Dawson was abusing." The dog Wilson's eyebrows rose. "He's been deemed aggressive by our behavioral assessment team. Failed his temperament test. Yesterday he's scheduled for euthanasia tomorrow." Based on whose assessment? Emily challenged. "Mark Dawson's the same person I caught physically abusing him. I'd like to see the actual behavioral evaluation forms." Wilson shuffled papers uncomfortably. Look, Dr. Carson, I understand you're new here and eager to make a difference, but we process over 2,000 animals a year with limited resources. Some difficult decisions are necessary. Emily remained unmoved. I am formally requesting temporary foster care for Titan, effective immediately, according to shelter policy. As a staff veterinarian, I'm authorized. To make that request, I'll complete all the necessary paperwork today. Wilson studied her for a long moment. You should know that Mark Dawson has many friends here. The last employee who crossed him, transferred rather suddenly. Is that a threat, Director Wilson? Just a friendly observation here. Plied smoothly, I'll approve your foster request, but the behavioral assessment stands. You'll have 2 weeks to show improvement, or the euthanasia order remains in effect. As Emily left Wilson's office, Maria Gonzalez, a young kennel technician, fell into step beside her. I heard you're taking the German Shepherd, she whispered, glancing around nervously. I've seen Dawson with other animals too, not just that one. Why hasn't anyone reported it? Emily's apartment wasn't ideal for a large dog, a modest 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor, with no yard access, but it was secure, and most importantly, safe. She had hastily purchased basic supplies, a crate, with a soft bed, food and water bowls, high-quality kibble, and a few toys that would remain untouched for weeks. Getting Titan from the shelter to her car had been challenging. Enough he'd frozen at the shelter exit, requiring Emily to carry all 70 lb of his underweight frame to her vehicle. Now at her apartment door, he refused to move again, trembling so severely that his nails clicked against the hardwood floor. It's okay, she repeated for perhaps the 100th time that day, her voice maintained at a gentle monotone. This is home now, no one's going to hurt you here. For 3 days they existed in a fragile détente. Titan found sanctuary in Emily's bathroom, wedging himself between the toilet and bathtub, a space so small that Emily wondered how a dog his size managed to compress himself into it. He ate only when she wasn't in the room, used puppy pads rather than risk going outside, and flinched at every sound, the refrigerator cycling. On the neighbor's footsteps overhead, a distant siren. Emily documented everything meticulously: his food intake, elimination, habits, stress responses, brief moments of alertness amid hours of shutdown behavior. As a veterinarian, she'd treated traumatized animals before, but Titan's case was extreme, textbook severe abuse response. On the 4th night, an early spring thunderstorm rolled through Thessaly. Emily woke to heart-wrenching whine coming from the bathroom. She found Titan in full panic, trying to dig through that old floor foam, flecking his muzzle, eyes wide with terror, moving slowly. She sat on the bathroom floor at a distance, speaking in soothing tones. The thunder can't hurt you. You're safe here for nearly an hour. The storm raged outside while Emily remained motionless in the cold tile. Gradually, Titan's panicked digging slowed, though his body still trembled with each thunderclap. Then something unexpected happened. Hunched closer to Emily, not making contact, but seeking proximity for the first time. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving them in a fragile new understanding. Titan remained in the bathroom, but positioned himself where he could see Emily moving around the apartment, progress, however minimal, at the shelter. Later that day, Emily noticed Dawson watching her with barely disguised hostility. How's the killer working out? He asked with a smirk. Bitten you yet? Titan is doing well considering what he's been through, she replied evenly, continuing her rounds. 2 weeks isn't long to fix a broken dog. He called after her. By the end of the 1st week, Titan had progressed to spending short periods in the main living space of Emily's apartment, though always maintaining escape routes to his bathroom sanctuary. He would now eat with Emily in the room, albeit from a distance, and had started to show interest in his surroundings. Brief moments of normal dog behavior, interspersed among hours of hyper-vigilance. Emily's documentation had grown extensive daily videos showing subtle improvements, detailed behavioral notes, and a consultation with Dr. Ramirez, a veterinary behaviorist who specialized in rehabilitating fight bus dogs. All of this would be crucial for the upcoming re-evaluation. He's showing remarkable resilience, Dr. Ramirez observed during their video consultation. But 2 weeks is an unreasonably short timeline for meaningful behavioral change. In a case this severe, are you sure you can't get an extension? I'm working on it, Emily replied, watching Titan where he lay in the bathroom doorway, alert but calmer than he'd been days before. But there's something bigger happening at that shelter. The abuse is systematic document. Everything, Ramirez advised, and be careful. People who abuse animals often don't hesitate to threaten humans who expose them. The warning proved prescient. That evening, Emily returned home to find her apartment door slightly ajar, heart pounding. She called out Titan's name as she cautiously entered. The apartment had been searched, drawers pulled open, papers scattered, but nothing appeared to be missing. Most importantly, Titan emerged from his hiding place under her bed, shaken but physically unharmed. A note lay on the kitchen counter back. Offer next time the dog disappears. Emily immediately called the police, then contacted Maria from the shelter. Don't come in tomorrow. Maria warned Dawson was bragging about teaching you a lesson he knows about the footage. Officer James Bennett took Emily's report with appropriate seriousness, especially after viewing some of the shelter footage Maria had provided. This goes beyond animal cruelty. He noted breaking and entering threats, possible conspiracy. I'll have a patrol car check your apartment regularly. What about Titan? Emily asked. The re-evaluation is in 6 days. If I can't prove he's rehabilitable, one step at a time, Bennett advised. Let's secure your immediate safety first. That night, as Emily prepared for bed, something unprecedented occurred. Titan, sensing her distress, approached voluntarily for the first time, briefly pressing his body against her leg before retreating to a comfortable distance. The investigation moved with unexpected speed. By Monday morning, state officials had descended on the Riverside shelter, seizing records and computer systems. Mark Dawson didn't report for his shift, having been tipped off about the impending raid. Director Wilson, however, found himself facing a team of investigators with uncomfortable questions about missing complaint forms, altered euthanasia records, and security footage that conveniently disappeared after incidents were reported. Emily watched the developments from home, continuing Titan's careful rehabilitation while providing statements and evidence to investigators. The German Shepherd's progress remained slow but steady. He now approached her voluntarily for brief periods of interaction, had started eating from a food toy that stimulated his problem-solving abilities, and had even ventured onto the apartment balcony for short periods. Officer Bennett visited regularly with updates. Dawson's disappeared, he reported during own such visit, but we've identified at least 3 other employees involved in the abuse or cover-up. Several former staff members have come forward since the story broke. The story had indeed broken wide open. Local media coverage expanded to regional news as the scale of the allegations became clear. Dozens of animals potentially abused, falsified behavioral evaluations leading to unnecessary euthanasia, misappropriation of shelter funds, and systematic intimidation of staff who raised concerns. Maria had become a key witness, providing investigators with meticulous records she had kept secretly for months. I should have done something sooner, she confessed to Emily during a video call, but I was afraid of losing my job. Many of us were. You did something when it mattered. Most, Emily assured her. On Thursday morning, Emily received a call from Sandra Phillips, the county's newly appointed interim shelter director. Dr. Carson, I've reviewed Titan's case file. The euthanasia order has been officially rescinded in light of the circumstances. However, we'd like to conduct a proper behavioral assessment when you feel he's ready. He needs more time, Emily explained. He's making progress, but trauma recovery isn't linear. I understand completely. Phillips responded, take whatever time. He needs your position at the shelter. Remains open when you're ready to return. We'll be implementing significant operational changes. That afternoon, as Emily worked on her laptop, she noticed Titan watching her intently from across the room. When she acknowledged him, he did something extraordinary. He walked to the front door and sat looking back at her, expectantly. You want to go outside? She asked, scarcely believing the initiative he was showing. A real walk? The brief excursion to the apartment complex's small dog. 3 weeks after the investigation began, Emily returned to the Riverside shelter for the first time, not as an employee yet, but to meet with the assessment team being assembled. For Titan's case, the facility itself seemed transformed, cleaner, better organized, with clear protocols posted at every station and new security cameras being installed throughout. Sandra Phillips, the interim director, greeted Emily warmly. The changes you are seeing are just the beginning, she explained as they walked through the kennel area. We've implemented mandatory training, on recognizing and reporting abuse, established an anonymous tip line, and created a civilian oversight committee. They stopped at what had been Titan's kennel, now occupied by a senior Labrador mix. How is he doing? Phillips asked. Better than anyone expected. Emily replied honestly. Dr. Ramirez believes he's a candidate for full rehabilitation, though he'll always carry some emotional scars. The assessment team meeting included veterinary behaviorists, trainers specializing in trauma cases, and shelter management. Their approach was refreshingly thorough, reviewing Emily's detailed documentation, consulting with specialists, and developing a customized plan for Titan's continued recovery. We're recommending that his case be documented for training purposes, explained Dr. Morgan. The lead behaviorist stories like Titan's can help change how the industry approaches traumatized animals. As Emily drove home, her mind filled with possibilities that hadn't existed weeks earlier. The legal case against Dawson and his accomplices was proceeding, with additional charges filed as more evidence emerged. The shelter itself was undergoing a comprehensive reform under Phillips's leadership. Most importantly, Titan and other Atricisk animals had been given the second chance they deserved at home. She found Titan waiting by the door, a behavior that had become his new normal, a sign of his growing security in their relationship. Their afternoon walk took them to a quiet park, where from a safe distance the German Shepherd observed other dogs. Without the extreme fear responses he had shown initially, Ramirez thinks you might eventually be ready for carefully managed socialization, Emily told him as they rested under a tree, one step at a time. Buddy, that evening as they settled into their routine, Emily's phone rang. Officer Bennett again, but this time his voice carried good news. We found Titan's original owner, he announced before the fighting ring got hold of him. Emily's heart sank momentarily. Would she have to give him up just as he was beginning to thrive? Bennett continued. His name was originally Max. He belonged to an elderly veteran named Thomas Warren, who reported him stolen 18 months ago. Mr. Warren passed away 3 months later, his daughter. Months after the investigation that transformed Riverside Animal Protection Center, Emily stood in the shelter's newly renovated training room, watching Max demonstrate. Remarkable progress. The German Shepherd, now at a healthy weight, with a gleaming coat, calmly performed basic obedience commands while a small audience of shelter staff observed. Max represents what's possible with proper rehabilitation, Emily explained to the group of new volunteers. When he first arrived, he was deemed unadoptable and scheduled for euthanasia. Today, he's helping us reimagine how we approach trauma cases. The shelter had indeed been reimagined under Sandra Phillips' sub-permanent directorship. The euthanasia rate had dropped by 62%, staff turnover had decreased dramatically, and community support had surged, following transparent reforms. Most significantly, a new rehabilitation program, partly funded by grants, Emily had helped secure, provided specialized care for behaviorally challenged animals. Dr. Carson, would you explain how Max's case influenced the policy changes? Asked Phillips, who had joined the training session. Emily nodded, patting Max's side as he leaned gently against her leg, a far cry from the terrified animal who once cowed from human touch. Max taught us that standard behavioral assessments often failed to distinguish between fear-based responses and true aggression. Animals reacting to trauma may present behaviors that seem dangerous but are actually survival mechanisms. The legal aftermath of the investigation had been equally transformative. Mark Dawson had received a 2-year prison sentence for animal cruelty and related charges. Former director Wilson and 2 other employees faced probation and community service for their roles in enabling the abuse. Most importantly, the case had prompted statewide reviews of shelter protocols, with new legislation pending to strengthen oversight after the training session. Emily and Max headed to their weekly appointment, not at a veterinary clinic but at Riverview Rehabilitation Center, where Max was completing his certification as a therapy dog. The irony wasn't lost on Emily. The dog, once deemed too dangerous for adoption, was now helping trauma patients with their own recovery. There's our favorite team, greeted Dr. Melissa Chen, the Sense Director. We have someone special for you to meet today. They followed her to a quiet courtyard where a young man sat in a wheelchair. His expression guarded. This is Jason, Dr. Chen explained. Former Marine struggling with PTSD. Jason, this is Dr. Carson. And Emily noticed the immediate shift in Max's demeanor, the subtle changes in posture and attention that indicated his growing intuition about human needs. Without prompting, the German Shepherd approached Jason carefully, sitting calmly beside the wheelchair and placing his head gently on the man's knee. "He was a military dog?" Jason asked, hesitantly touching Max's head. "No," Emily replied. "But he understands trauma he's been through his own." Where something in that explanation resonated with Jason for the first time since they had entered. His guarded expression softened. "Yeah?" he said quietly. "If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who loves inspiring stories, and help us spread messages of courage and hope. Remember, when we stand up against abuse and give animals the chance to heal, they can transform not just their own lives but ours as